think more funding towards infrastructure, especially with like public transit for the city and everything that comes with it. Like, I think that Maine is beautiful for what it is, but also the public transit is not as far along as we're trying to pull the rest of the city.
Okay.
I would say, making things more accessible and having more spaces for people to talk to each other. There's already a lot of public spaces, and that's what I really like about this place, but there's more public spaces like this for people to meet and talk and be together.
I think if I had a magic wand, I would swipe it all over the state and have more solar power and wind power.
Oh, that's good. I think my magic wand would narrow the difference in financial ability across Maine. So the people who are not doing very well financially would do better.
I think if I had a magic wand right now, I'd try to address or I would solve the problem of child hunger and child poverty in Maine. From everything I've heard, it's actually outrageously high numbers of kids who aren't getting the right start to life. I think that's critical to the future of the state.
Biggest challenge that we find here in Maine, especially in this unique spot, Congress Square Park, where we get a whole slew of people, of the whole gamut with income, race, color, creed, religion, is just economic inequality is so prevalent, and you can have somebody driving by that makes $500,000 a year and somebody else laying over here on the sidewalk, and we just see that all the time.
I think a problem that I will face a lot is like just trying to find a home to live in, being able to afford a place to live. Right now I'm already paying obviously a lot of money to go to school, and I don't think honestly any of the people my age are going to be able to afford property when they're older.
What's a challenge that you face in Maine?
I've lived in 7 different states and 1 province of Canada. And one of those 7s was Maine. And it's the best state I've ever lived in. And I think I can remember challenges that I had in other states, but never a challenge in Maine. We love it here.
We live in Portland, and I think it is how expensive it is now to live in Portland.
Very expensive. So
Yeah.
that's
We pay $15 for 5 or 10 trash bags. But we recycle, so it's okay.
So, if you had a magic wand, what is the one thing that you would change about Maine to make it a better place for all of us to live, the way life should be?
I would think allow there to be equal access to healthcare, childcare, affordable housing, and Maine's great environment. That was more than one.
That's perfect. What one thing would you change to make the way life should be in Maine for all of us?
That all people would have enough to eat, a good place to live and stay, shelter, that every person would have that.
What's the biggest single challenge that you see that Mainers face today?
I think it's the same as it's faced in the larger world, that those who have so much have so much, and so many people have nothing. That's the biggest challenge.
If there were 2 people one on the far left and one on the far right with opposing opinions, how would you meet those people in the middle?
You just have to love them both. You have to love everyone, love every person. The ideology is pushed to the forefront and people lead with that, but the ideology is not as important as the human being. So you have to love everybody. So it's the only way.
In my world, people get together from different backgrounds at the hardware store, which is a great place to meet, and also at job sites, construction sites. I'm involved in the construction industry as an architect, and it's really interesting to talk with people from the different backgrounds that are represented there.
Hi, and welcome to Maine Challenge. We are so excited this fall to move a little bit away from Zoom land and Zoom interviews for our Maine challenge, and to really we want to look at challenging Maine to be the best it can be for everybody in the state. So through the course of this fall and into the winter, we're going to talk to people who are doing amazing things, people who have amazing ideas, people who are experts in their fields, and people who are ordinary Mainers who are just trying to make do. But we want to lift up the voices of those people who are thinking about these things. And I am so excited to start with two people. Alex lives in Manchester, Maine, and it has her own Serra Public Affairs group that works on media and political work. She also has a design site called Snowbird Design that you should check out because it's pretty awesome. And she has been a TV reporter. She is a huge supporter and ally of so many groups in Maine doing incredible things, and is just an amazing dog mom and a human being.
So where were you a TV reporter?
I was on Channel 6 and Channel 2, NBC affiliate.
NBC, good.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, good.
It was several lifetimes ago. We still talk about it because it's important what I do, but it was several lifetimes ago, it feels like.
Yeah, and we've all had a few.
Yes. It was my third of 9 lives.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on about 7 now. So. And Frank.
Okay. And Frank,
the one and only.
The one and only Frank O'Hara, who we affectionately referred to as Franco, who lives actually next door to me. And I am so graced to have him and his wonderful wife, Jane, as my neighbors. But he has been also involved in every aspect of life in Maine, I think, from being a planner, regional planner, and a researcher, and a speechwriter for Joe Brennan, occasional speechwriter for the current governor, and he's worked on a ton of campaigns, been a strategic advisor, including several of mine. And so, you have been just an amazing...
We're not going to go into the one lost record.
No, we're not. So I'm going to bring out my magic wand. Now, you may think this looks weird, but this is Minerva, who also is the Grace is the capital in Augusta, the dome, if you've ever been to Augusta. And she is the goddess of wisdom. So I'm going to give you the magic wand.
Okay.
You know me, I'm all about the magic.
Yeah.
So, and as we face challenges, and just regular Mainers, every day, if there was one thing you could wave this wand, and you think that would really start to change and really make a significant change for Mainers in our lives, what would that be?
Oh my God, I'm first.
No.
Yeah, you're first.
Okay. This is I've never held a wand before. So I'm so happy to have a wand finally. I'm waiting for the tiara next.
I can be arranged.
What would I really don't dare her. Don't tempt her. I'm really all about understanding each other's point of view. Like that, audience alignment to me is so important. And I think I would grant insight to all of us as to our own perspectives. So whether it's the conservatives or the progressives or the immigrants or the, fifth generation Mainers, I would grant the ability to finally understand where each other is coming from, because I really think there's a lot more common ground. Once you understand that, then I think we all want the same things.
Yeah.
And I think we come at it based on our own life experiences. And if we just had that understanding of each other's worlds, we'd be breaking bread together instead of battling each other. That's
a historical analogy I think of that is when Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, during the Reformation era, Queen Mary comes in and burns to death all the Protestants, and she then dies, and Queen Elizabeth comes in and burns all the Catholics. And when we look back on it, all of those people have so much in common. They had so much in common in the way they lived, the way everything that mattered to them in life and everything. And they thought the differences were huge, enough to burn each other up. And I think people looking back at us are going to say, oh, we have all this in common. We have common families and communities and hopes for our kids and religions and everything else. Why were they so crazy about each other?
Because of Henry VIII.
That's it.
Your turn.
And surely there's a Henry VIII somewhere in here.
Yeah. My magic wand thing is one, Betsy, you may have heard me talk about before. Give 16-year-olds the right to vote. because I think educating a new generation about the importance of voting, they would, at 16, they'd learn in school, there'd be a course, they'd be learning how to read an ad, see what's going on, what's a campaign, what's an issue, what's an office. Taking it seriously and educating a new generation of informed voters that we take for granted that kids getting out of school, they're going to know what to do, and they don't see the importance. They don't vote. If they vote, they saw an ad and this is what they're doing. You know, I think that would be a difference maker for democracy.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about how those two
No,
things...
I want it back because now I've been...
Okay, go ahead.
I also want to say the value of vocational training in high schools and junior high schools, and that we need to revalue the trades, right? I think our current governor said you can find a lawyer much easier in Maine than a plumber in her inaugural speech, and I think that's still true a few years later. And I think we really need to reinvest in that, and financial education for all Maine students as well, I think is really important because
well, isn't that...
I know a lot of kids who don't balance checkbooks. They don't know how to do it when they're graduating high school, and that's really scary.
So isn't that sort of related to us understanding each other? Do you think, Franco, to your point of 18-year-olds or 16-year-olds, like we've sort of gotten away from civic education. We've gotten away from, in my view, teaching people how to think, helping people learn how to think critically, how to, and being able to have conversations with people you don't agree with. I think we've become so tribal, right? We like to hang with people who feel like us, who think like us, and so then we don't ever have to sort of have a conversation and then drink iced tea together, or whatever. Like we get to just go retreat to our corners, and so part of I think why we devalue, this is back to your to the trades, is do you think that we devalued the trades for a while, and then so people just didn't want to do it, and that was part of what we did because we didn't give enough credit or enough cotton or whatever? Is that part of? Is it part of?
I mean, my understanding of how this all sorted through, and I could be totally wrong. This is just based on what is that, and I come from a family of tradespeople, right? Is that the goal became to get your kids through a liberal arts school. And that just didn't, and that was the gold standard for the middle class family. And so the trades were like not something that accomplished middle class families had their kids do. There's a perception of that. I mean, I think that's just so misguided, right? I mean, my own husband has had a career in a marketing business and now has an arborist company, right? And so he works in the trades and it's so valuable and gives back to the community so much. But I see the people that he works with and they're rare. I mean, it's hard to find good climbers, it's not like we know this coming out and have those opportunities to be trained. But I think it's just about all what we have valued and what the gold standard was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And now the bubble's bursting. Everyone's in debt. Everyone's got a liberal arts degree. No one knows what direction to go with it. Myself included. When I figure it out, I'll let you know.
So part of what you're saying, I think, is that we really have to focus on younger folks, right? And I find, and I don't know if it's true, I don't know what you're finding, you both are surrounded by a lot of young people as well as I am, that they don't have that level of anger or division that people in generation below us and our, I'm generously saying we're all in the same generation, that's not true. But and so is that, do we just sort of leave what's happening, the hard part now and sort of just really focus on rebuilding and reforming those communities and really focusing on young people? Or is there a way that we can start to address people who are feeling that conflict now?
The reason I think about starting again is simply that what happened in rural Maine, and I think about the mills closing and the mechanization of the forests and the loss of jobs. It's it's very hard to go back and undo that 35, 40 year period and recreate jobs and mills and things that, that economy is gone. So it's got to be a reimagining or invigorating of those communities in a different way. They're going to have to be a different place than they were historically, but it's also why they're so mad. If you had a dream, if at my age, somebody growing up, if I was growing up in Millinocket, and seeing these jobs and thinking, wow, this is great. I'm going out of high school and I'm going to do this thing. And and suddenly it's all closed and there's nothing nobody cares. Nobody is responding. It's not a statewide problem. That's your problem. So that was a horrible experience, but I don't know. We can't go back on that. Millennick's recreating itself. It was a recreational and next to the new park and all that other stuff, and that's what we have to work and build on, and the internet and all of those things. But it is hard to. It's under the anger is real, and there's been a whole generation who's seen their communities collapse.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think there's. I hold out hope. I think there's a real. I think some of it is geographical in Maine, but I think there is a real divide, which I hold social media responsible in large part for that. I think that.
And where's the divide? What is the divide?
Well, I mean, the obvious low-hanging fruit is partisan, but I think we've put ourselves in these echo chambers, and the algorithm on our social media platforms feeds into that, so we become more and more and more and more divided, and then it's amplified by our cable news choices and what printed materials we read and all of that.
And I'd add one other piece to that, and that's where we live.
Oh, so geographical.
Our neighbors. We live in communities with people with common values around us. So that we may talk to our neighbors, but it's talking to somebody in the next community over, or the next town, or the next neighborhood over that we don't do enough of.
And I hold out hope if we can achieve that.
Yeah.
Then we have a deeper understanding again of each other's perspective, and that's what I always go back to is how can we speak to each other in a way that we understand. So I hold out great hope for community conversation having meaning. We don't converse anymore. We talk at people. We don't sit down to understand another person's point of view. I don't think the Constitution would have been written today because I don't think they would have come to consensus. I mean it. I mean, certainly the Bill of Rights wouldn't have. There's no way because no one's listening to each other. Everyone's just coming up with a great idea, coming up with the clever soundbite, and that becomes their platform as opposed to, saying, maybe I was wrong by excluding this concept. And that's a good point. Hold on, let me go research that and really think about it, and we'll talk more. There's not a lot of that. I think there's more of that happens than people want to recognize at the state legislative level. I do think that does happen on a daily basis by legislators trying to form laws with insights from industry, community, impacted segments of the population, depending on the bill. But people don't want to recognize that, so that doesn't get a lot of airtime. But I think just regular community members could be doing it as well.
I want to talk about community because do you feel like people are just, especially since the pandemic, are hungry for community? Like, is it your sense that people are at a place now where they're maybe more open to this idea, or to the idea about oh, geez, we're not talking to each other very much. We're not and I mean, do you feel do you think there's an opening that we haven't had?
Yeah, I do. I think loneliness is a huge issue, and I think when I think about just going off on homelessness or other problems of that people have, part of it is loneliness. It is that there's not a community. Their family, their friends, whatever, are fragmented and dispersed, and people who a generation ago had social support don't have it. And I do think that feeling of being community needs to be nurtured and fostered. It's not happening because we're growing up in 3 deckers next to each other with no car and everybody's related. You didn't have to work on community. Then it was all over in your face. But now we have to work at it and make connections. And I think people are hungry for that.
Yeah. So how do we start? Yeah, what do you think?
I also think that our country experienced something during the pandemic, which was so jarring, which was the George Floyd, Amy Cooper, all of this stuff. So I feel like while the pandemic might have in and of itself fed to some of our own introvert tendencies and lazy tendencies. I also think there was a huge call to awareness and action during that time, which was a community building experience for many, 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 many people and a big awakening. And I'm not sure that awakening wouldn't have happened if we weren't all at home.
Yeah.
I think that the ground was fertile for mass mobilization of Americans. And I think in my lifetime to major moments when I've been an American and I haven't been partisan or one, and 9/11 was certainly was probably the number one. I think that George Floyd, like Amy Cooper kind of stretch there, and Breonna Taylor and all these other, major points of racial awareness in our nation. It was another one. I look for those moments as when have we all been united Americans, and unfortunately comes at major tragedy. But we don't seem to carry it past a 2-week, 3-week, 3-month period too well.
Do we have any of those? Have we had any of those moments in Maine? Like where we feel like Mainers?
I think the ice storm was one of them.
Yeah.
I think that the racial events of our nation were one, and I think you would have seen quadruple the turnout had there not been a pandemic at some of the marches, and but I think the ice storm was really the last one I can think of. We were all Mainers,
You're a historian. Can you think of any others?
Can I think of others?
Where we come together, and it does seem to happen around tragedy, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe you can think of one. But the other question is there a way for us to nurture that and grow that around opportunity instead of tragedy? Like, is this that moment? Like, right, if you take all those things, right, all the things that have happened, right, the pandemic and the economy changing and the racial awareness and just a lot of things, right? And we're getting a lot of money from the federal government, right? So could this be like a moment where we do this new thing and we actually create that feeling of Mainers and right as resulting of opportunity and not a crisis?
Yes.
That moment will become that moment when we decide it's that moment. Like, I don't think it's because of external things. I think it has to, if this is the moment, let me know. If it's 3:00 tomorrow, I'll be there. If I missed it last Tuesday, let me know next time. Like, the moment is when we say the moment is.
Okay, so this is where you come in. When we give you the magic wand, how are you going to help challenge Maine to be the best it can be for everyone? We're going to be on the streets, in your farmers markets and neighborhoods asking that question all through this season of Maine Challenge. So come find us or we'll come find you.
Seriously, Texas? Seriously, Supreme Court? This is how you're going to overturn Roe v. Wade? This is how you're going to overturn our control over our own bodies? There is so much to say about this that I don't even know where to start. I could talk about how cowardly it is that you did this in the dark of night, literally, without a trial, without a court case, but just basically doing nothing to overturn this major right that we have had. I could talk about the thousands of women in Texas and soon to be millions of women across America who are going to lose access to safe, legal abortions and will have to endure botched abortions and health risks. And I'm very clear that this is about brown and black and poor women mostly, because white women who are wealthy and your mistresses will still have access to abortion when they need it. I could talk about how you know nothing about women's menstrual cycles and women's health, because 6 weeks, a doctor won't even see you until 8 weeks to even begin to talk about and see if you're pregnant. So you have effectively banned abortion for women in Texas and soon to be across the country. I could talk about how you have empowered vigilante justice, how you have enabled ordinary citizens to go after the secretary at Planned Parenthood or the Uber driver who gives the poor, desperate woman a ride and said that they can take them to court and get a $10,000 bounty for their heads. I could talk about that. I could talk about how for 40 years we were called hysterical when we warned of this moment, when we said we must guard about the Supreme Court. We have to be careful. I could talk about Susan Collins when we said, watch out. This means that we are going to lose the Supreme Court. And when she took 45 minutes to explain to us how her beer-guzzling misogynist friend would never do this. Yet here we are. I could talk about all of those things, but that's not what really gets me, because we could have seen those things coming. What I really don't get is that the very same people who are saying they care so much about the children and they want to take care of the children, and this is about the unborn children, those are the same people who are refusing to wear a damn mask so that they don't kill or potentially infect and kill the children that are currently alive. How do you sleep at night? How do you look in the mirror? How is it possible to hold both of those things? But I get it. This is never and has never been about the children. This is about power and control over women. Well, you are about to see just how powerful we are. So women, grab your brooms and fire up the engines, because it's time to ride.